I'm Kelly, and if this is your first time joining my channel, welcome. I'm glad to have you. I'm just going to preface this by saying a few things. First of all, if you don't know already, this is my response video to your questions, and I asked in a video previously to ask your questions and I would answer them in a video. So that's what this video is, and it's part of my Keratoconus series about my personal experience with keratoconus and how I might be able to lend that experience to you. So I am not an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. I'm just simply someone who's gone through this, so take my advice with a grain of salt. I am not a professional. Second of all, it will be a little bit rambly. The reason why it's so late coming up is because I've recorded this before. I was honestly really awkward in it and I just rambled on forever. So I'm still going to try to give my first reaction, or it'd be like a second reaction. I'm going to try to answer them on the spot, but if I ramble too long, I'll have to cut it off because it was just ridiculous. No one's going to watch all of that. And lastly, I have had all of my stitches removed since my last suture removal video. I probably won't be posting a video on that particular experience just because it's a lot of the same, but I will post a video next time I visit the eye doctor, and that will be in about a month. And then I'll be checking my vision. I will be checking my vision in my other eye and discussing getting cross-linking. So I will fill everyone in then. One last thing is that I will be reading the questions off of my phone, so because of this, I might not be able to answer them in the particular order that they were asked. So please just bear with me when it comes to that. All right, let's get started. Okay, so the first question that was asked was from Ingrid Kiss, and she asked about going back to work after cross-linking. I can't honestly particularly respond to cross-linking because I haven't had it yet, but I can say after the transplant, you can probably go back to work. I think you said it was about working on a computer for extended periods of time. I would definitely consult your doctor and ask what he would advise on that. I'd say at least you'll need probably a week of recovery before you can go back to staring at the computer for extended periods of time. I'm going to go off on a small tangent here about working after a transplant, is that if you're doing something that involves a lot of dust or a lot of heavy lifting with a transplant, you probably will not be able to go back to work right away. I'm not sure about the dust part, but I know that it can be irritating, so that you'll have to ask your doctor. As far as heavy lifting goes, it's a 20-pound weight limit, I believe, for the first month. For the first month or the first couple weeks, and then it goes to a 50-pound weight limit after a while. Excuse me. And that is so you don't bust your stitches, but I'm not sure about cross-linking because there aren't any stitches as far as I'm aware, because they're just using a drop that gets rid of the top layer of your skin, which sounds really gross, but it's what it is and it helps our condition. So I'm not sure about computers right after that. I know that it is a little bit more intense of a recovery than the transplant in terms of being able to stare at a TV or light for a little bit. I think my doctor said last time I asked him, which was only maybe a week or two ago, was that you have like 4 or 5 days where you'll have to be, maybe 4 or 5 is more, but 3 or 4 days then of sitting in a dark room. Essentially, you're not supposed to watch TV, you're not supposed to be on a computer, but I'm not sure how long that would be until you can go back. So I definitely suggest asking your doctor because he will know best. And one last thing on Ingrid's question is just, again, me elaborating on it, is just people ask about using a computer quite often, so I just want to address this. I still have some difficulty working on the computer. It's mostly if I've been on a computer for a very long time And I think the best thing, as always, is to give your eyes a break. And that goes for people who have keratoconus or diseased eyes, as well as people who have normal vision. So definitely, if you're going back to computer work, especially for extended periods of time, take breaks in between, give your eyes a rest, and make sure that you're not doing some excessive strain on your eye. Okay, again, elaborating on Ingrid's question because I didn't really read it appropriate at first. I have been able to work on the computer for extended periods of time, yes, but I do eventually find that I am straining my eyes too much, and I have had it blur sometimes when I've been staring at the computer for a very long time. I'd say that maybe a week after my surgery, I was a little uncomfortable using the computer just because I still had some light sensitivity. But basically after then, that I've been fine. I've been taking an online class, and I've been doing a lot of online work with my business and making these videos. So I've been fine with using the computer, and I'm sure you will be too. Just make sure to give your eyes a rest, as I've already said. All right, now I will respond to Oscar97's comment. So I'm going to have to kind of read through as I go along. But so I know your main concern is about driving, and you're saying that your peers are starting to drive, and you're a little bit concerned that you won't be able to partake in that, especially when it comes to your goals of owning a motorcycle and getting your motorist license. I don't know if that's the proper term. That's what I'm going to call it in this video. So you said you've had cross-linking, which is good, and you said that it went well. So you said that you're worried about not being able to get the motorcycle, which would be this summer. So if I've missed your deadline for getting a motorcycle, I'm sorry. But here's the thing. Even if you have keratoconus, you're able to drive. It just depends on the severity of it. I personally was I'm trying to figure out what to say. My keratoconus was very far along. I was practically legally blind. I couldn't see the giant E on the vision charts, and I couldn't make out people's faces without my glasses, so it was really, really far along. It sounds to me like, since cross-linking was an option for your keratoconus and you didn't have to get a transplant, that your vision wasn't as impacted by keratoconus as mine was at the time. Your keratoconus hadn't progressed as far. So you got the cross-linking to prevent it from progressing further, which means now your vision should be correctable by glasses and contacts, and it's just not going to progress further. You can obviously comment if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're doing fairly well. Yes, because you said that you are in the early stages of your keratoconus. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want to say, hey, you're not progressed very far, but you said you're very early in your stages of keratoconus. Driving is definitely a possibility for you. For me, it became kind of a level of lack of comfort, if that makes sense. I did at one point get my permit, and I started driving using my permit, and I did a driver's ed course and all of that. And I was comfortable with it for a while, but I just had a couple of instances where I felt really uncomfortable. I had a school bus just zip around the corner. I had to drive in the rain, and at that point, I don't think I even knew how bad my vision was at the time. So I just became very, very uncomfortable. And not to mention, I had to drive when the sun was going down. So the sun was always in my face every time I would drive. So I just became very uncomfortable, and I didn't even try to get a license. It didn't mean that I couldn't have, but I didn't try because I personally didn't feel comfortable. It wasn't until later on that I found out that my vision was pretty bad, and honestly it wouldn't have been super safe for me to drive anyway. But since you're in early stages of keratoconus, you should be able to drive. Just honestly ask ask your doctor about maybe contact lenses. You said you haven't tried them yet. That would be beneficial for riding a motorcycle probably. So yeah, definitely a possibility. So I wouldn't be too worried about your, not being able to pursue your goals. And as far as your problems with your vision, I wish I could give you some insight about the problems you have during nighttime, but again, I'm not a professional. I'm just kind of blending my experiences, so I would bring that up to your eye doctor next time you see him or her. And maybe that could be corrected for with certain type of glasses or certain type of contact lenses. And you did say you had a follow-up appointment, so that's good. That's good. So definitely, if that hasn't already happened, ask about that. And if it is, you still probably have the opportunity to ask, and I think that would be a good idea. Yeah, so you also said that your doctor said that a transplant would be your last resort. So it's good that you have those options, and that's great. I'm so happy for you, and I hope that you can get your motorcycle and your motorist license. So yeah, I hope this helps. I know I didn't really answer a question, but I just wish you the best, and I know that keratoconus probably will not keep you from your goal of driving a motorcycle. Just talk to your doctor about your concerns. So on a kind of related note, I am going to respond to iFlyUp's question, and this also relates to driving. So no, I'm not driving at this point. I will be very soon, and I will follow that in my videos as I work through that journey as well. So I will mention when I'm doing my driving with the assistant, I'll talk about, if you want, I can talk about the driver's ed course. I'm just going to be taking an online driver's ed course. So I can talk about that, and I plan to talk about my driving when I get to driving again. So when I made my last video, I rambled about this for so long. So I'm going to try to make this short and sweet, but it's a very important part of keratoconus, especially if you're not comfortable to drive or unable to drive at this point. So you said that you're getting pressure from everyone to drive, and that you're 21. I'm 24 and I still don't drive, so I can definitely give you my personal experience with this. So first and foremost, I've also had pressure from people to drive, and that includes my own family members. So I'll say I've had more pressure from certain family members than I have from other people. There's a pressure that I put on myself to drive because I know that it would allow me so many opportunities, and currently I'm going to have to be driving in the next year because I'm going to be in graduate school and I need to get to internship opportunities. So I definitely know there's a personal pressure I put on myself, and I'll maybe get into that a little bit more. But as far as if friends are pressuring you, and I've elaborated on this and when I previously recorded on this, if friends are pressuring you, there's a few things you can do. Maybe reconsider who your friends are, because honestly, it's not that they're horrible friends, it's just if they were really great friends, they would understand your situation. When I was in high school, and I know you're past high school, as am I now. When I was in high school, I had friends that would drive me home, even if they lived a half hour away, provided that I gave them the gas money, because my parents both worked and I would have to be at school until 6 or 7 o'clock at night at sometimes. So I definitely surrounded myself with friends who understood my situation. And I've also had times where friends have kind of abandoned me because of my inability to drive. I've had a friend that I was really great friends with in high school, and we tried to get together, and honestly, I just feel like she wasn't as understanding as I needed her to be about meeting up somewhere where it wasn't such a burden for my dad to drive me to. And today we have a lot of options as far as Uber goes and stuff like that. And I've been getting into using that lately, which is really great. I used to be really, really terrified of using public transportation because it was hard for me to see where I was going, and I'm just really shy as it is. So that's another option. If your friends are pressuring you, and even your family too, if your friends and family are pressuring you to drive, it's obviously because they either want to hang out with you more and it makes it harder because you don't drive, or it's just because they don't necessarily have the time to drive you themselves. So maybe look into some public transportation options. So that's another way of handling it with your friends if they're kind of pressuring you to drive, is just meet them somewhere and use public transportation. But I think basically you'll be ready to drive when you're ready, and I think it's kind of not appropriate for people to push something on you that is, understandably scary for you. And definitely, you'll be ready when you're ready. I'm 24 and I'm just now starting to feel like I'm ready to drive again. Albeit I've had my transplant and I'll be getting cross-linking soon, but that was a step that needed to be taken for me to feel comfortable starting driving again. So definitely know that it's really you that ultimately gets to decide when you need to start driving again. But that might mean that you might have to take more public transportation options. So that's one thing. And as I said, it's kind of a burden that we put on ourselves at times. It's not that sometimes people don't actually feel the burden, but sometimes it's the burden that we put on ourselves. My parents live in 2 different states, and they have to meet each other in, the middle of nowhere at a gas station or something to do a Kelly exchange, as I put it, where I hop out of one car and go into another one, and then we drive on our way, which is, in my mind, a huge burden to my parents, because then my dad has to drive all the way back to where he lives, and then my mom has to drive me to where she lives. So I definitely feel bad, and I put that on myself because I know that it is time consuming. So I definitely know that I put some burden on myself. As far as, sorry, I'm making a very weird face. As far as family goes, it kind of depends on the closeness of that family member, because I've had my own instances of, actually I've even had like my tiny family, my mom, sister, dad, them. I've had problems in that situation too, saying that I needed to take more responsibility, getting places, which may have been true, but as I previously mentioned, I used to be terrible at taking public transportation and amazingly horrified at it. So if it's someone part of your immediate family, that's the word I was looking for, talk to them about it, and maybe together as a group discuss some options of working through that. So that's one suggestion. And if it's a part of your extended family, here's the deal with that. I had someone in my extended family go behind my back and complain to my immediate family about how I should be driving and how I shouldn't get rides from them, which honestly is none of his business. So, and it didn't affect him. So he was just kind of trying to stir the pot. If there's a case like that, if you're brave enough, tell that family member, hey, this is something that I have to deal with on a daily basis, and it affects me more than anyone else. So I would appreciate it if you didn't stick your nose in this and let me work through it. I will be ready to drive when I'm ready to drive. And I don't think you would appreciate if I was uncomfortable or unready to drive and something were to happen. I'm not saying it will. And that's another part of your question. But I just say if it's someone part of your extended family and it really doesn't affect them, just ignore it. It's not worth it. So, yeah, just ignore it if they're just being rude. So, yeah, as far as being afraid of getting in an accident, I think that's normal when anyone's learning to drive, to be honest. But it makes it even more common when you have a visual impairment. So, definitely see about getting your vision corrected. See about whatever method works best for you with glasses and contacts. And when you feel comfortable, that's when you'll be ready. There's always, trying to get over that hill of being nervous about driving. And I think that happens with people who even, have perfect vision. I think there's some nervousness there always. So it's completely understandable in any situation, but especially understandable in yours. So you say you don't use your rigid gas permeable lenses, and I think I responded to a comment of yours about this in another video of mine. But rigid gas permeable lenses, in my opinion, are very uncomfortable. I used them for a while. I could probably only keep them in for about 2 hours. They were just not my favorite, and I've been through the ringer as far as contacts go. I used soft lenses before I knew that my vision was so bad. I used hybrid lenses, which were soft on the outside and hard in the center. I used rigid gas permeable. And lastly, I've used scleral lenses. And I think it kind of depends on your own eyeball and what you're used to. Personally, scleral lenses for me were great. I haven't worn them in about a year. Less than a year, but I haven't used them in maybe like 6 months because of my transplant. So I haven't worn them in a while, but what scleral lenses are is they're larger lenses, and I'm sure you know this. I fly up, but I'm just saying for everyone else, scleral lenses are larger lenses that only touch your sclera, which is the white part of your eye, and dome over your cornea. So you don't have as much contact on your cornea, which would irritate it. And you fill it up with a solution, which was like a kind of oily solution for, lubrication for your eye. And they worked pretty well for me. The only struggle I had with that is they were a little uncomfortable if I had been working in the studio for a long time because my eyes would dry out and they would get uncomfortable when taking out sometimes. Sometimes I'd scrape my eye and that was just miserable. So I think there are benefits and downfalls to every type of contact lens, and I know they're really expensive, so it's hard to try them all out, but I definitely think maybe talking to your doctor about using a different type would be a good idea. Maybe even if they just give you one of the sample contact lenses. I know it takes some money for the appointment, but I think it's worth giving them a try. Okay. You also said that you haven't seen your optometrist since December of 2015. And you were asking what you should do. And you also mentioned that you asked your doctors about the surgery and they said it was not legal at the point, which I'll explain in 1 second. Okay, So if you're referring to a transplant, it's completely legal. So your doctor gave you totally wrong information. The transplant is completely legal. I don't know why he would have told you that it was illegal, but it's legal. Cross-linking, however, is not quite FDA approved yet. If you were to get cross-linking, you have to go to a doctor that is part of the FDA study. And I think maybe your doctor was saying that, and it was a year ago, over a year ago, that you saw him, but even then cross-linking was being performed. I've known about cross-linking for a very long time. So as part of an FDA study, you have to be with a doctor that is involved in that study to have it performed. For cross-linking, for a transplant, you should be okay. It's totally legal. As far as going back to your optometrist, you asked me if you should. Definitely you need to see an eye professional, but if you're not comfortable with your previous doctor, then I would suggest finding someone that you are more comfortable with. Because I definitely had my fair share of doctors who were not good to me, were not nice to me, and just made me cry. Literally, made me cry every time I went in there. So find someone you're comfortable with. It will be much better for your experience. And if they were saying that a corneal transplant is illegal, I don't know if I would trust them. So take that and run with it as you will. If you want to go back to your doctor and you're comfortable with them, I would, but maybe present them the facts, say, hey, it is legal to get a transplant. Why did you say it wasn't? Maybe I don't know if you said it was an optometrist or what. Maybe they didn't have the means to do that in that particular medical group. So if you do get a surgery down the line, you'll probably have to find a specialist. Luckily for me, the people that I see right now also do the surgeries. I don't get to see the doctor every time I'm in there, but it's the same medical group that did my surgery that I see on a regular basis now. It didn't used to be that way. So definitely see an eye doctor, but if you're not comfortable with the one that you have seen, please see someone else, because if you're uncomfortable with the eye doctor, it's not going to be a pleasurable experience for you. And you also said that you are afraid of the surgery if you do have the option. So I'll talk about that when I answer other people's questions. And also, I'm sure you've seen my Keratoconus experience video, but I definitely explain how the operation went and how it felt, especially for the first few days afterwards. It really wasn't that scary. It was scary knowing about it and, not knowing what it feels like, but it wasn't as scary as I made it out to be in my head. All right. So on the topic of my experience with the surgery and, how scary it is, what was the worst part, what was the best part, I'm going to answer a drumming man's questions here. So what was the worst part of the whole process? Not knowing exactly what to expect was kind of a bad thing. I went into the surgery not looking up anything because I was afraid of knowing what it was. I didn't want to see videos of it because I thought that would scare me more. But when I went into the office the day of the transplant, the nurse practitioner told me all these scary words. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the hair on my face, but all these scary words about pressure and pushing and pulling, which all sounds very scary when it's related to your eyeball. And, it didn't help me in any way. It didn't saying, oh, it's going to feel like pressure pulling your eye, didn't help me. Because let's face it, that sounds really scary. So the worst part was not knowing what to expect, because the way the nurse practitioner explained it was just even more terrifying, even though it really is not that bad. And I'll say part of the medical procedure that was the worst is that I got a laser cut for my transplant, which means that the wound would have more surface area and would be stronger. So it wasn't the laser that really hurt, because you can't even feel that, but they put this mechanism down on your eye and push a lot of pressure down on it. And that was the worst part, honestly. That was the worst part. Not being awake for the whole thing, that wasn't even as scary as it sounds. And I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, so that was the worst part of the whole surgery. It just kind of hurt a little bit because it was a lot of pressure, and then that was a little sore the day after. But it was really quick. It was, a little bit of pain for a really short amount of time. Sorry. So, definitely that was the worst part of the procedure. It wasn't that bad. So, what was the surprising? Oh, one last thing about the worst part is the recovery is kind of slow, which is to be expected. I mean, if you talk to your doctors about getting a transplant, they'll say that full recovery is in 6 to 8 months. Even I, who started getting my stitches out a couple months early, think that the process is kind of slow. So I think just kind of waiting around is a little bit annoying. So those are the worst parts of it. The surprisingly easy, non-scary part of the process, surprisingly, being awake for it was not that bad. It sounds completely horrifying, and I was afraid of that too. It really was not that bad being awake for the surgery. There was a part of the surgery where they did give me anesthesia and put me out for a little bit of time to give me a nerve block so I couldn't move my eye around, and so it would be numb. And that was a nice little nap. That was the best part of it, was taking a nice little anesthesia-induced nap. But being awake for it was really not that bad. It seemed to go a lot quicker than it did. And as far as it sounds so scary hearing that they're going to remove your cornea and put another one on. But during the procedure, it really just, when they removed my cornea, it just kind of looked like bokeh. If you have ever seen bokeh for photography, which is just like spots of light, that's what it looked like. And as far as him sewing it up, there was only like some slight pinching every once in a while, and I just let him know, and he would put more numbing drops in my eye. I think it took about an hour and a half. It's been a long time, but I think it took about an hour and a half, but to me it maybe felt like 20 minutes. So surprisingly, being awake for it wasn't as bad. It really wasn't painful and wasn't scary. Maybe a little bit boring because they put you under, a surgical cloth that just has the eye cut open. That's not the eye portion of the cloth cut open. So they put you under a surgical cloth, so you're basically looking at like a cloth and a surgical light the whole time. So a little boring, but not as scary as it sounds. And then I think they did give me some like anesthesia to calm me down, but not knock me out. Okay, so I think you asked me the overall price. I think I did mention this in a comment on another video, but it really, really depends. I don't personally know the cost of my surgery because my parents are helping to pay for the surgery for me. But I think it ranges from about $13,000 to like $27,000 without insurance. So it's variable. I think it depends on your surgeon. It depends on the type of things that are involved in your transplant, like I know that the laser cut, I don't even think the laser cut is generally involved in your insurance, but the laser cut's more money, and I think the partial lamellar transplant is a little bit more money. So I think it just depends on the certain things that are involved in your particular transplant. Excuse me. Okay, I kind of answered this in Ingrid's question about going back to the computer for several hours a day. I think maybe a week or two after your surgery you'll be okay, but definitely take breaks and definitely ask your doctor about that too. I don't want to give you the wrong information. Your doctor might say a month, but I know that I probably started using the computer a couple of weeks. I honestly started using it like the day or two afterwards, and my dad got mad at me. So I stopped using it. But definitely ask your doctor about that. It should be relatively soon after your surgery that you can go back on the computer. Just give your eyes a break for sure and don't be straining too much. Okay, quickly I'm going to answer Arthur Akigbu's question, and the question was how much my vision has improved. This is a question that I oftentimes don't answer, not because I don't feel like my vision is improving, but I feel like it's something I can't give you a number to. I haven't asked my optometrist and ophthalmologist about exactly how much my vision has improved. It's really, really gradual. I can tell that my vision's way clearer than it used to be. I can make out faces in my right eye that I wouldn't be able to before. I can see my hand, which I wouldn't have been able to before. But those are just my opinion and my observations of how my vision is improved, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable about giving an opinion rather than actual empirical facts. So I can try to ask my ophthalmologist about how much my vision has really improved, but I know it's really gradual. So I can tell you that I can make out like the first 5 lines on the vision chart when I used to not be able to make out the E, but these aren't really, and even still, sometimes if I miss a letter or a number, I don't necessarily know what I missed. The last time I went to the eye doctor, I got to maybe like the 4th or 5th line, as I said, and I got all of them on the last line that I read except for a number, which when did they start throwing numbers on these things? I don't know. But except for a number, which was a 6, that was which I said 8. And it was very, very similar in shape. The 6 had a very small gap between the hook and the round part of the 6. So it's hard for me to tell you an exact number. So at this point, I can't tell you exactly how much my vision has improved. And I wish I could because I get this question a lot. But as of now, I just don't have a solid answer for you. I'm sorry. Okay, last couple of questions here. I'm so sorry if I can't pronounce your name correctly, but this one is from Sadrak Miranda, and you asked about getting your keratoconus, your transplant, I'm assuming, on June 20th, which is so soon. I wish you the best of luck, and I know that is going to go fabulously. It sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. So I wish you the best of luck with that. And you asked about being able to travel to Mexico on August 1st. I can't give you an answer for that because I don't personally know. I do know that it is somewhat frowned upon to go on an airplane after a transplant, but I don't know for how long. And the reason why you're not really supposed to go onto an airplane after your transplant is because the pressure in your eye is elevated. So it's about your pressure in your eye, and with the airplane, it's, a lot of increased pressure and decreased pressure, given how high the plane is and whether you're taking off or landing. So definitely talk to your doctor. Ask if you will be able to go on the plain by that point because you'll still have your stitches, and you'll have your stitches for a while after that, because it's 6 to 8 months before most people start having their stitches removed. I definitely say maybe schedule an eye doctor appointment before you go, and at that point, if they think it's okay, then go for it. But I think definitely ask your doctor, see how long it takes, and actually let me do some research. So, sorry, I'm going to be, my eyes flicking back and forth on the screen and typing for a second, but okay. So flying is definitely not a good thing right after. Okay, so you definitely need to see your eye doctor beforehand, but generally I think you'll be able to. It says it's about an air bubble and pressure. It says between 2 days and 2 weeks, which means you'll have an adequate amount of time if that's the case. But it also says that you'll need to have your ophthalmologist look at your eye to see that the air bubble has dissipated and to see if you'll be able to go on the plane. So definitely schedule an appointment with your ophthalmologist to see if you can go on an airplane, and you'll probably have an appointment before then anyway, because when it comes to transplant, you have so many eye doctor appointments. So yes, that's my advice for you. I can't tell you whether or not you will or will not be able to at that point. You'll have to consult your doctor about it. Oop, that's not where the button is. All right, so last question of the video, and then I will do a quick overview of what's occurred in my life recently and how that will have some impact on my vision. But so the last question here is from White Devil Redemption Arts. And first of all, you're absolutely welcome for doing the videos. I really enjoy them. It's been, a good healing process for myself, and I've been glad to help others in return. So I'm glad that you're enjoying them. So you asked particularly about being aware during the surgery, which I touched upon in another question. You will be aware during a corneal transplant. And I didn't find it to be that scary. You said that you had okay. So you had a stromal ring, you said. I have no idea what that process is like, so I can't base the pain or the procedure to that in any way. And I'm sorry, I wish I could. But I was awake for most of it. I was given anesthetics to be knocked out for a little bit, for I don't know how long it was, maybe a half hour, so they could give me my nerve block. I was aware of the laser, as I said, which was kind of the most painful part. It was just, they describe it as uncomfortable. It was a little bit painful in my experience. Sorry, kind of zoning off here. So in my experience, it was kind of painful, and I said to my parents afterwards, I kind of wish I could have said hey, can I hold a nurse's hand? It's a little painful, but it was really quick for that, and not everyone who gets a corneal transplant is going to get the laser part of the surgery. So that part was a little painful, a little uncomfortable, but it was really quick. Then I went downstairs to get the actual transplant done after they cut my eye. The worst part of that was being in a waiting room, told to fill out forms while I had an eye patch on my eye. And I don't think it was like dripping or anything. I think it was kind of like just dry feeling. So that was the worst part, which was that pressure, which went away quickly, and then sitting in a waiting room with an eye patch over my newly lasered eye. But it wasn't scary, and it wasn't super uncomfortable at that point. Then I was put out for, as I said, like half an hour. They gave me IVs and did all of that, and I had my nerve block done, which meant my eye was really numb and I couldn't move it around. And then I went into the actual procedure. I had a heart rate monitor. It's blood pressure. It was a blood pressure cuff. Sorry. On my arm, and I was trying to count how many times it was going off to see how long it had been, because basically he said the shorter it is means that we had to do the full thickness transplant. The longer it would take means that we were able to do the partial thickness transplant. So I was trying to count just because I wanted to see if he was able to do the full thickness, the partial transplant, or how to do the full thickness. So I counted maybe about 10, something like that. But I thought it took way longer. So actually 10 would be like 50 minutes, but clearly at that moment I couldn't do math. So I thought it took like 20 minutes. As I said in a previous comment, I was aware, but it wasn't really painful. It was just kind of weird. It was just kind of like lights that I saw, and it was just interesting. And then when he was actually doing the procedure, it just was sometimes a slight pinch, but I'd let him know. I'd say, hey, is it pinching? Is it normal for it to pinch? And he said, it can be, but I'll give you more eye drops. So yes, I was aware, but it wasn't really that bad. So I hope that helps. I know that it's kind of hard to hear from someone that's not that bad, even though like you still might be afraid of it. But surprisingly, being awake was not that bad for the surgery. And it was kind of interesting, and I was kind of glad, because then I was able to tell the surgeon if something was uncomfortable for me, and he was more than willing to adjust it so I'd be more comfortable. I hope that helps. All right, one last statement for White Devil Redemption Arts' question is, have I had anything done to my other eye yet? No, I have not. I will be going back to the eye doctor in a month, or somewhere around there, maybe a little bit over a month, but in a month, to check up on my transplanted eye, as well as check the vision in my left eye to see if it's progressed any further, essentially, to see if cross-linking is still an option. My doctor wants me to think about getting the cross-linking, which I have for a while, and I'm planning on it, to make sure that I don't get a transplant in my other eye down the road. So I will definitely make another video talking about that next appointment when that happens. One last thing that's recent news in my life that is related to my vision and just kind of connected in a way is that I started sculpting again. So I've started making a new sculpture. I've gotten to the point where I've started casting some pieces of it, and I haven't really had any problem with it. When I first started sculpting with the clay, I did have a little irritation in my eye, but it was relatively recent after getting stitches removed, so that was kind of just a bad choice on my part. But I've had no problem with doing the sculpting in clay or the casting. Clearly, I've been careful about not getting anything in my eye or like wearing goggles when casting. But I've started doing some artwork again. I haven't really found that it's impaired my artwork, and I am excited to see how my artwork evolves after my transplants. So I will maybe leave some pictures here, and then you can see what I've been working on. And maybe I'll leave some pictures of previous artwork just so you can see, you know, the similarities, if anything's really changed after my transplant or not. So, yeah. And then I will probably put the next part of this after. All right. Okay, so lastly, I'm just kind of going to summarize recent news in my keratoconus journey and recent just events in my personal life that are going to not necessarily impact my vision, but just my vision plays a part in them. So, first of all, yes, I've had all of my stitches removed in my right eye after the transplants, and I will be going back to the doctor in a month. And I will definitely fill you in as I've said before. Excuse me. Another thing is that I have been accepted into a grad program for art therapy, so yay, that's really exciting. And I will be taking online classes for that. So I have a lot of questions asked about computer work and classes, and I might make some special videos about dealing with schoolwork with keratoconus and how to work around that, especially if you have to work on the computer or do a lot of reading, because I've definitely had to find strategies that allow me to learn even though I've had some trouble with reading or, you know, seeing the board in the classroom. So I'll definitely make a video about those strategies. I think that would be helpful for a lot of people. Lastly, since it's a really, you know, big improvement and, you know, a lot of people are curious, is, as I've said in this video a couple times, is I will be starting to drive again very soon. I'm going to start my online driver's ed course, which would be the written portion of it, all of the rules of the road and all of that. I've taken it before, but I'll be taking it again, obviously, because I want to start, you know, working my way towards getting my license. But also involved in that course will be driving with an instructor, and I will definitely keep you updated on that. I will let you know how I've been doing in that, and then eventually talk about my license. And, you know, maybe that will be another whole kind of series to this keratoconus series about driving with keratoconus and kind of starting to drive again. I'm probably not going to record in the car because that doesn't seem very safe, but maybe if I can find some sort of dash cam that would make it safe, I will do that. But I won't probably be talking to the screen too much. So, yeah. So there will be developments in my driving, and I can't wait to share those with you. There's going to be developments in, you know, understanding how my vision is progressing in my right eye, and there will also be some new developments in my journey to getting cross-linking in my other eye. So I definitely can't wait to share those with you. Thank you everyone so much for watching these videos, and I have hoped that they've been so helpful, because I know that I could have used something like this when I was going through all these experiences. So again, just thank you, and I, you know, hope to make the next video soon. Bye.